Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast.
Go Blue and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. In just a minute or two, we'll be joined by one of our very favorite guests, Chris Balas from the Wolverine magazine. We are just weeks away from Big Ten Media Days in July, which for many of us is the official return of college football. We will have plenty of time to preview the upcoming season starting in August, but for now, most of us have been closely monitoring Michigan's recruiting efforts with the class of 2023. To say we're a bit alarmed, I guess, would be an understatement. In July, Michigan will have some big recruiting weekends and the barbecue at the Big House, which brings to Ann Arbor some of the very best high school talent in America. As of this morning, we now have a 2023 class of 6 verbals. Our only 5-star, Raylan Wilson from Tallahassee, Florida, decommitted this morning. Most Michigan fans thought after the success last season, we would finally haul in a class that competed with the elites in college football. That hasn't happened so far, not even close. My guest today says there are a lot of factors at play here that are impacting the class of 23. Jim's flirtation with the NFL certainly did not help, and not adjusting to the new NIL impact on recruiting has also been a negative for Michigan. Up next on our Game Day segment to discuss this and more is Chris Balas from the Wolverine. So stay with us. Here with us on our Game Day segment this week, and it's been a while since we talked to him. It's Chris Balas from the Wolverine. Great to have you back with us, Chris.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me, my friend.
Well, this time of the year, Chris, July is when we have Big Ten Media Days. Things start to heat up, but at this point, we're always focusing on recruiting, and we had hoped for good news in June and May, but as we record, and this is a Wednesday morning, we've learned that Raylan Wilson, the outstanding 5-star linebacker from Tallahassee, Florida, has decommitted. Not good, is it?
No, it's not, and it's just kind of the latest punch in the gut for this recruiting class, and 2023 is off to a slow start. There's no question about it, and the summer months are when you really make things up, and you've got your visit weekends, and that's when guys commit, and some of these kids in the past that would have been committed by now are basically being advised by people or their families or whoever to wait it out and see what they can get in the NIL game. And the NIL was never supposed to be pay for play, name, image, and likeness. Kids were supposed to be able to benefit from it, but it wasn't supposed to be used for recruiting purposes, and that's exactly what it's become, which I think we all knew it would. And the NCAA either doesn't care or can't do anything about it. It's probably a combination of both. So here we are. And I'm not just saying that this pertaining to Michigan. It's anybody that really isn't 2 feet in with their boosters and, enticing kids. These kids have lawyers now, Mike. It's unreal, and agents. And I don't think that was the intention of the law and the rule, but that's where we are. And the ones that figure out how to do it are going to get a step ahead. Let's call it what it is. It's semi-pro football now. And for traditionalists and for people who grew up loving college football, I think it really stinks.
It really does. And, with this Raylan Wilson news, we somewhat expected it in the last few weeks. I mean, the kid's deep in SEC country, so we thought this might happen. But let's move it a little north. I mean, right in our backyard in Detroit, and we have, 5-star quarterback Dante Moore, who I'm not saying we thought he would be a lock to come to Michigan, but now we're hearing stories, especially over the last weekend, that he's just about ready to commit to Oregon. Do you think that's a fact?
I do, and I think it's probably going to happen, and for various reasons. And, I don't know that Michigan did a great job recruiting him. I don't think Matt Weiss, that's his strength, being a recruiter and Michigan's quarterback's coach, and I don't think that helps. But at the same time, again, you get drawn out there and see what's out there. And, the numbers being floated around about what he's going to get. And I can't come out and say, okay, they're paying him to come there, but I think promises are made and, probably within the rules that, hey, this is what you're going to get if you sign at Oregon or whatever. And that's kind of going to make the difference. But, and to suggest otherwise is naive. And I don't think anybody is suggesting otherwise. I think everybody understands what's going on here. So, and it's unfortunate. And it's really one of the reasons that I wrote a column about C.J. Carr, Lloyd Carr's grandson, who ended up at Notre Dame, and I thought, okay, if this is the route you're going to go, and Jim Harbaugh says it's going to be transformational, not transactional, if you're coming to Michigan, then you better get kids that are really invested in this university. And I thought C.J. Carr would be one of those guys, and maybe he's the guy you go after and go all in for. They didn't. They lost him to Notre Dame. Now it looks like they're going to lose Dante Moore. So it's tough. It's going to be one of those things that they have to adjust to. Otherwise, they're going to get left behind. And the one thing I will say is it's too early to panic and say that the program is doomed, because you're talking about one recruiting cycle. You've had great recruiting cycles in the previous 2 years. Those two classes are going to carry you for the next couple of years, but you got to figure it out here. You can probably survive one recruiting class that's not as strong, but you can't survive two or three and continue to compete for championships. So, but the fact that they weren't prepared for this, Mike, is really the disappointing part. And we'd heard all along that, hey, this isn't going to be anything that's going to transform the game, and from the Michigan side, and just wasn't realistic. So they've got some catching up to do now, my friend.
Big recruiting weekends coming up. We have barbecue in the big house, so there is time for this class to make a considerable improvement, isn't there?
There is, and at the same time, if they don't change and I don't know what you do, because I don't think Jim Harbaugh is going to say, okay, we need to pay kids. He's about meritocracy, and one of the things he said was, you know what, these guys that have been here and sweating and killing it, these seniors, they deserve to get theirs first. And I think he's absolutely right about that. But at the same time, to land recruits now, you've really got to step up to the plate. So I don't know what the middle ground is, or what you do to change your approach, but they've got to change something. And because even if you get kids now, like we saw with Raylan Wilson, somebody else is going to come along, make them an offer, or offer them something better, bigger and better, and these kids are going to go. They had a kid from the West Coast, I won't mention his name, who is torn. He loves it here, he wants to be here, but he's got people in his ear saying, if you don't take an offer somewhere else, then you know what, you're foolish, and he might end up somewhere down south. So they've got their work cut out for them. So yeah, there's time at the same time, and I firmly believe that. It doesn't, just because they aren't getting the recruits that they did in the summer, doesn't mean they can't finish strong, especially if they have another great year and figure some things out. So don't push the panic button, but certainly there's cause for concern right now.
Well, I think right now this class of 2023 is ranked somewhere around 41 or so, in that area. Would you be shocked when it's all said and done in December or February, Chris, if this class does not end up top 10 or even top 15?
No, I wouldn't. I think it wouldn't surprise me if it was in the 20s, to be honest with you, because I'm just not sure how you compete in this environment. Now, look at Michigan State. Michigan State's bringing in 4-star kids, and that's not the norm. And schools that normally aren't recruiting well are recruiting extremely well because they've got people that are all in for it. You look at Texas A&M, they flat out bragged that they were making spending $20 to $30 million on a recruiting class. And of course they backtracked and, because they didn't want to get in trouble, but let's be honest, they're not going to get in trouble. The NCAA is there to get their money. And, you know what, if something were to happen, there'd be a lawsuit and they'd say, well, it's legal anyway type of thing. And the NCAA would throw its hands up. So that's the way I look at it. So, but I do think that there's time to land some recruits. They just landed a 4-star linebacker from the class of 2024 early, of course. So, but they did get them, and there's time to add to this class. But they're losing players that they want to programs like Illinois now and Iowa, and that's an issue. When your Plan B guys are going to other Big Ten schools like that, when you're coming off a Big Ten championship and you've got all this good young talent, then something is certainly wrong.
E.J. Holland and all of our recruiting analysts, they say, we really recruit against Notre Dame more often than any other school. And you look at the class that Notre Dame is putting together right now, very high-level guys. And I don't think Notre Dame is fooling around with NIL in any kind of a negative way, or I would be shocked if they were. So it makes you wonder, then, what are they doing different? What is it that Michigan is not doing?
Right, and they have a collective, and I think they're a little more organized is what it is. And so I don't think Michigan was organized going into this, and I don't know who you blame for that. You look at the athletic department, and we've said, what are they doing and what is their plan? We heard Gene Smith at Ohio State, the athletic director, calling boosters together and saying, okay, what are we doing and what's going to happen here? And We haven't heard anything like that going on at Michigan. And so that's why a lot of us were nervous that, okay, are they going to be prepared for this because this is going to be a game changer? And it certainly doesn't look like they were, that they didn't take it seriously enough or whatever. So, but to me, that would be the study. I know that the boosters, some of the boosters like Jared Wangler and some friends of ours even have gotten together, and they were really the ones that had to really do something to respond to this because nobody else was doing anything. And that's unfortunate because it should have been organized, when as soon as the ruling came down, it should have been organized. Okay, how are we going to deal with this? I think Notre Dame did a pretty good job of that, developing a collective, and I think that's the next step, is to get your boosters in line and in an order and say, okay, what can we do within the rules here, and how can we get the message across that our kids are getting paid? Look at J.J. McCarthy, how much money he's making. Look at Hunter Dickinson on the basketball side. The amount of money he's making has made him stay at Michigan because he could have gone, and made a lot of money overseas or even been possibly drafted in the NBA draft. So that's what you have to explore right now, and but you got to do it soon. If you want to salvage this recruiting class, and I it's too early to use that word salvage. If you want to gain momentum in this recruiting class, then that's what you got to start looking at, and you've really got to start getting better organized.
Well, there is no question. NIL is a game changer. It's in its infancy. It maybe is even off the rails right now.
Right.
I don't think we know because all 50 states have different laws. It's being handled differently. It just seems like it's way off, Chris. But when you watch Ryan Day talking to don't know if it was the boosters or the media, and he says, we need $13 million in NIL money to keep our roster intact. I was watching that and thinking that sounds like something an NFL GM would say. It just seems just so out of touch, doesn't it?
It's absurd, and it's not. It's just unfortunately you're out of touch if you're not talking like that these days. And what it is the reality is it's semi-pro football now, and it's just where we are. And I remember I go back to Bo Schembechler's words about telling his kids in the early 80s, you'll ever play for a team again, you'll play for a contract when you leave here. And that's why it's so special to be here. And every one of those guys bought into it, and they all believed it. And none of those guys regret it. Every player I've talked to said, you know what, if I had to do it over again, I'd do it the exact same way. The thought of making some money on their name, image, and likeness would certainly come into play now. But they loved their experience, and they loved everything. They said it was the best years of their lives, and that's gone now. And maybe it will be, and these guys are still getting paid. But you're right. When kids are getting $9.5 million contracts or deals before they even step foot on campus, that's absurd. And it's just, what does it say to the guys in the locker room? And it remains to be seen how it affects these teams. There's been talk like, okay, the guys at Texas A&M are mad because the freshmen are coming in and making more money than they are, and so on and so forth. But you know what? At the end of the day, talent wins games, and Alabama has managed to do it in keeping their roster together with all those 5 stars, and Georgia has found the recipe. So to me, the bigger issue is finding the talent and somehow convincing them, whatever your message is, that this is the place to be. And it's not going to be the academics and athletics thing anymore. I think that ship has sailed because these guys are making all the money up front now. They're getting their guarantees before they even arrive on campus, and that's crazy.
Well, there's no question about it. And I know Jim says Michigan will not use NIL as a recruiting tool, but I was listening to an interview with Nick Saban a couple of weeks ago, and Nick said it's only been, a year that NIL has been in existence. But he said, when I sit down now in a kid's living room and he has these people around him, he said, that's a big change in the last few years. But he has his people. And he said the first thing out of most of their mouths is NIL. What kind of an NIL program you have? And he said, as an old guy, he said, that's a real adjustment to get used to. But now these kids expect you to come when you call them. That's topic number one. They expect to hear about that.
And they have agents. And they have lawyers, and it's absurd. And don't get me, I don't feel a bit sorry for Nick Saban. We know what they've been doing for so many years. And so, however, he's got a point that, okay, his concern was it was going to be a game changer and allow people to compete with Alabama, and it is. Look at Texas A&M, and Texas is going to have a huge NIL boost. Look what they got Arch Manning and the elite quarterback. So that's a fan base that is starved for victories and will do anything to get it. It has tons of rich boosters, and Tennessee's another one I see that's going to probably benefit from it. Michigan State is already benefiting from it. So it's a game changer in a lot of ways, not in a good way, in my opinion. And I'm not just saying that because we cover Michigan and Michigan wants to do it differently and has done it differently over the years. A lot of people would argue that they've done it better and cleaner than most if you look at the history of the program. So, and that's a source of pride. But at the same time, you've got to adapt somehow, or you're going to be in the Ivy League, right? Or you're not going to be relevant. And the football program is what funds the rest of this elite athletic department. And let's call it what it is. This is an athletic department that competes for championships in all sports. So I think there's too much invested here. Too many people understand that this is the force driving the athletic department. They're going to have to do something here. Otherwise, they're going to get left by the wayside.
Stay tuned. This whole NIL thing is, as we said, it's just getting started. There's going to be a lot more talk in the next few years as to what can be done to curb it or how it needs to be changed. We'll leave that for another day. Until we tee it off in September, there's, other than recruiting, not a lot to talk about until we get into July. But Big Ten Media Days, it really is right around the corner. It's not that far away, is it?
I can't believe it. It's like, I think 4 weeks, and it seems like we just put our football preview to bed, and we're going to mail you one, by the way, so that you have one. But and now, we get a month before we head to Indianapolis, and then a month after that is really the start of football season, or 5 weeks. So it'll be interesting, because I'm very interested to hear the questions that Jim Harbaugh gets about NIL and how he answers them. And, he's stubborn, and I like that about him. I love the fact I wrote a column that it's noble but risky, the route that he goes in stating publicly that we're going to be transformational, not transactional. And at the same time, can you win that way? So I want to hear what his opinions on that. And J.J. McCarthy and Cade McNamara. J.J. is going to be back to throwing, I think, within a few days now. 100% is what he told us up when he was in Traverse City. So that's going to be a very interesting one. Interested to see who they bring. I think Cade McNamara will be one of the guys they bring to Indianapolis, and who are the other leaders that they're going to bring down there. So those guys always represent themselves well. So, but that's always fun. That's really the unofficial kickoff of football season, and when they get started. So let's be clear, this is a talented football team from top to bottom. They've got depth at every position. If they can figure out who their pass rushers are, this should be a fantastic team that competes for a title. So all's not lost for Michigan fans. You look at a couple of months and how it changes the tenor of a program, how it's we're doomed because we've had a couple of bad months of recruiting, but I'm telling you, when the season gets here, Michigan fans will have a lot to cheer about.
Oh, absolutely. The offense is loaded up, and of course all fans are going to be watching the battle between Caden McNamara and J.J. McCarthy. A nice problem to have two very, very good quarterbacks. I guess the defensive side is where most of the, I wouldn't say it's concerned, but there are question marks with a new coordinator, a lot of new faces that have to step up on that side of the ball, Chris. So we really do have a lot of questions, don't we?
We do, and a lot of talent, though, too. And they think that the secondary, even losing Brad Hawkins, Daxton Hill, and Vince Gray, has a chance to be just as good. They think DJ Turner can be elite as a corner, and he proved it at times last year. Love what they've seen from Rod Moore. He's a Brad Hawkins type in the secondary in only his second year. So this is a student of the game. Some of the guys told us that, and you'll read this in your football preview, he watched twice as much film as anybody else in that secondary last year, on that team last year. And that's one of the reasons that he was able to play. He was calling out plays out there when he was on the field like he was a veteran. So Junior Colson, I think, is a guy who's really going to step up too, and they're going to find different ways to use him, an elite athlete and a linebacker that Michigan really hasn't seen in a long, long time. He's got Devin Bush type speed, and he's much bigger. So sideline to sideline, still a great player. This is a guy that's going to be making a ton of money in the NFL in a few years. So, but the big question mark is, who are your pass rushers? Is Taylor Upshaw going to step up? Is Mike Morris got that ability? And if not, then how does Mike Elston move those guys around up front to create the mismatches? I know that we've heard Derek Moore's name, true freshman, maybe by the middle of the year. I think he's got a chance to be their best pass rusher here in the next couple of years. He is a freak athlete in the Ojabo and Hutchinson mold. So he might be asked to step up a little bit more quickly than than in past years he might have had to. So, but that's the one question mark to me. I think the interior line is going to be very strong. I think the linebacker core, Nikhai Hill-Green, took another huge step this year. I really like him. So we'll see what happens. They've got players. We'll see how it all comes together.
Chris, as always, it's a pleasure having you on the show. The next time we get you back, I'm sure it's going to be to a preview either the season or an upcoming game, and we cannot wait to get our hands on our Wolverine preview, which I know is on the way. So, as always, Chris, we thank you for your time and look forward to that next visit.
Anytime, my friend. Thank you very much.
On Quick Hits today, recruiting will continue to be a big story in the month of July and even during the season. I'm like most of you, though. I thought that beating Ohio State, winning the Big Ten championship, and making a playoff appearance would bear fruit on the recruiting trail. As we talked about today, it has not so far. And as Chris Balas said, there is time to turn it around, though. But Michigan has a lot of work to do, and we're going to have to face the fact that NIL is here to stay, and we need to find a way to make it work for us too. That will do it for the month of June. We're still on our summer schedule of 2 shows a month, so we'll be back here on July 13th with our next show. Thanks again to Chris Balas for being our guest today. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Have a great Wolverine week, everyone. Until we meet again in July, take care, and as always, go blue.
Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!